Hi everyone, my name is Natalie Dawson. Welcome to Leader Talk. This show is proudly brought to you by Brainiact. Each week we are meeting with incredible leaders from around the world to discuss all things leadership and business insights. Each person coming on this talk show has given up their valuable time for one very clear purpose: to give back to small and medium business owners. There is so much small and medium business owners can learn from big business, whether it's learning how to identify new opportunities, dealing with change, or even maximizing their sale price. Today, my guest co-host Michele Lombardi, CEO of CNH Fine Foods, and I are fortunate to chat to our guest speaker, Michele Lombardi, Senior Vice President at CNH Industrial. Michele's passion is to motivate the growth of technological startups through board participation and aims to further push our world into the technological era. Michele is here today to help us understand how to best deal with change, the importance of networking, and how we can all look for new opportunities to expand our business in new and interesting ways. Welcome to the show, Michele. Oh, sorry, Michele, we've lost you.
Thank you, Natalie. Thank you, Mimmo. It's so nice to be here.
Welcome, Michele.
It's great to have you on, Michele. And Michele, we begin each show with two fun questions that we ask our guests.
Okay.
So we have your two. So the first one we'd love to ask you is, what is your favorite meal to cook and why?
Okay. So actually, I was telling this story earlier. I was cooking today during one of my conference calls, which is my secret thing I do sometimes. And I was making a ragu bianco, which is a meat sauce that we make in the northern part of Italy.
Fantastic. Have you ever done that, Mimo, cooked while on a call?
No, I'm not that talented.
Neither am I.
Michele, he's obviously a better multitasker than I am. So yeah, I just eat the stuff. So yeah, very well done, Michele. How many hours did it take, Michele? How many hours for this slow cook?
3.5, 4. Yeah, but I haven't tried it yet. I only made it. It's for tonight for dinner, so we'll see.
Slow food, I love it. Slow food movement. It's great. Beautiful.
And fantastic. And so our guests do know Michele is actually coming live to us from Chicago. So it is afternoon time, about 5 o'clock, if I'm correct, Michele?
Right. It is.
Great. And second question, what is the best piece of advice you have ever been given?
I think the most important advice I've received has been that of listening to people, meet people of all ages, of all extracts, of all different new people, and listen, because everybody has fantastic lessons to teach.
Brilliant. Fantastic. And Michele, I gave a bit of an intro about you at the beginning, but we'd love for you to tell the audience more about yourself and also about CNH Industrial.
Sure. Again, Michele Lombardi. I've been with CNH Industrial for almost 20 years. So quite a long time. In reality, the group changed its shape so many times over and over. It used to be a large group with cars, the Fiat cars, Alfa Romeo, Ferraris, tractors, combines, and excavators and trucks, newspapers and everything. So I moved across all this and across the world. I lived in Italy, obviously. I lived in Switzerland. I lived in Thailand for a very long time, in Australia for a couple of years, and now I'm in Chicago. And now the group CNH Industrial is a $20 billion US dollars revenues. 60% of that agricultural equipment, your big tractors, your big combines, and 30% construction equipment, and the rest is financial services.
I mean, what are the brands that you represent?
The brands, yeah,
brands.
Sure.
Beautiful.
New Holland, Case IH, so the red tractors, the blue tractors, and Case Construction.
Very good. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. Look, we've got a few leadership questions that we do want to ask you, Michele, just from your experience, because obviously you've been there for a long time in various roles across different geographies. What qualities do you think make a great leader today? Do you think it's changed over time, the qualities that people are looking for in leaders?
Totally, dramatically, even in my very brief horizon, because it's just a kid. Leadership has changed dramatically. I think it has moved from a sense where the leader was supposed to have all the right answers and had a strong communication, a strong decision making, it has shifted dramatically to that of, as I was saying, being able to listen, to understand, and to distribute decision making in a way where the leader gives guidance, gives a direction, and coaches, and allows people to then solve for their own task and give direction to what they're doing. This distributed model has various benefits. Obviously, you're leveraging much better on a collective decision making and experience. It motivates people significantly, and it inevitably makes you deliver better results, because the people you're working with are closer to the issues or to the opportunities, so they're more capable of capturing all the opportunities that they can
So
see.
in the case of like operational challenges, you defer a lot to the operational managers to solve these issues, and traditional leader would probably have to jump in and maybe do a lot themselves, but you're empowering people to do that sort of work for you and make the decisions in consultation, I suppose. Is that right?
Correct. And this ranges from that. It ranges to marketing decisions. It ranges to, even in my case, in transactions. When we acquire a company or we look at a space where we want to enter, it would be impossible for me to be on top of everything and take all the right decisions. This distribution is so this shift has really changed also the dynamics inside a group, inside a company, where more junior people take more ownership, which I think is a very significant leadership trait.
Yeah. That's really interesting. And then, Michele, you said you've mentioned that you've worked across different geographies. Do you think these qualities change regardless what part of the world we're in?
Yes.
It
Yes,
does.
they do. They do. I mean, I think the substance is the same. We are all connected. We're all exposed to the, I don't know how to call them, mega trends, the mega currents on how society is changing. But then you still have locally the legacy of the cultures that you're in, that you have to understand and respect, and you have to be you have to understand that people, no matter how you push them around or expose them to changes, will always have a way of thinking that is based on how they grew up. So you have to be mindful of that. And what helped me a lot is living in so many different places and working in environments of different religions, of different foods, completely different languages, has obviously taught me a lot.
No, absolutely. And what about then values? As a leader, what values would you say are most important to you, so we can understand, Michele?
Right. For me, the most important values are accountability, so that you take ownership of what you're supposed to do, and you communicate properly. So it goes to the second one, which is being able to work in a team, which means motivating people, communicating with people, and making sure that everybody is fully aligned and involved. And thirdly, and I'm very strong on this one, very strict on this one, is I always expect people and myself, obviously, to always deliver the best that you can. Never be shy, never be short.
It's interesting, Michele, the communication one, we always talk about that, something that we can never get right. And, we always reference death by email. What sort of communication tools are you finding are working? I mean, I don't know about you, I'm over emails, but we have them now. 20 years ago, we didn't have emails. How did we survive? So what, other than email, do you find are really good communication ways with your team?
To be honest, I'm killed by emails too, and I generate a zillion emails. And then when I feel there's too many emails, I actually start hiding the fact and do chats on WhatsApp or SMSs, so I shift across different media. But at the end of the day, it's the same thing. No, I tend to avoid long conversations, long calls. I think the message is then diluted. Normally, I have snap conversations with people, like maybe 15 minutes. So I book 15 minutes with a couple of people. Normally, I don't do it on purpose to just, let's speak with you, Natalie. I normally have a topic. It might be a project or anything. I take that opportunity then to really get a sense of how things are going, how the person is feeling. Are we challenging the person in the right way? Are we stretching the person so that motivation is strong? And so that's how I do it. I have many of these every day.
Yeah,
That's very interesting because, yeah, from what I'm listening to, the ownership thing is very much what small business people have every day, and delivering your best. Everyone tries to do their best, but the communication is really that's a great tip for us. That's fantastic. Thank you. Bye-bye.
And Michele, I guess if we stay on this, delivering the best you can, it's how it can be hard for a small business owner, to constantly, they've got so much on their plate. How do they, they've got to also make sure that their few employees that they have are also performing. Do you have any tips on how to actually bring out the best in your employees?
I think it's a combination of things. And to go to your point, I'm not too sure it's too different from big corporations like mine or small companies. At the end of the day, we're all submerged. I think it's one fundamental element is that of surrounding yourself with good people, people that are strong, people that are motivated. You have to give these people a purpose. It's not just a matter of doing their homework right. But if they understand what we mean, what are we really trying to achieve, and then if you delegate to them the right task and they feel empowered, then you got a fantastic base on which to work. And at that point, you just have to teach them, understand that it's such a waste to do. I mean, it's going to take you 2 hours anyway. Just do it, adding all the smarts that you can. What I keep telling my people is whatever you do and you deliver, maybe that one email or a big presentation, it has to surprise your audience. It cannot be a rationalization or repetition of information that everybody already knows. It has to give a different insight, has to have a new perspective. It has to have that extra information that they would have never been able to find themselves. That way you always add value. And what it means in the end is that person, that member of the team has not wasted 2 hours. The hours that they worked have delivered something exceptional. For me, that is fundamental. Else, what are we doing all this for?
So, Michele, surprise the audience. Can you give us an example of how you've surprised an audience? That's a great one. I love it because it means you're breaking new ground. You're telling me something I haven't seen. Everyone's been in meetings where they're falling asleep, and yes, I've heard all this before, and it's Groundhog Day. So, give me an example of how someone in your experience has surprised an audience.
My job is relatively easy from that perspective. I only do extraordinary things. We bring new strategies, or we propose to buy companies, or we propose mergers. So everything that we do is surprising to begin with and exceptional. I normally try to bring that innovation is by going beyond. So if I'm talking about a merger, I don't look at the obvious. I don't look at the volumes, the geographies, the products that everybody knows. We have to do it. We'll do the homework. I try to understand elements that are beyond that. It might be governance. It might be consequences. So if I buy a company, what's going to happen? How does my management team change the way they work? How does it impact competition? How will somebody else react to what I'm doing? I try to think. The example I bring also to my team is think about chess. So you're moving your chess piece, and that is relatively predictable. But you win, and I normally lose actually, but you win if you think 2 or 3 moves ahead and you start really mapping out what other people's will should have been thinking, but they haven't. And that way you ignite a far more creative conversation with your audience.
Really interesting way of looking at it.
Yeah, the chess analogy is very good. We've never had that one before, so it's actually quite relevant, because chess is a very tactical, very strategic game. And this is the game that we play in modern business, because I suppose, and it's changed over time because it's become more, because of the amount of knowledge we've got, the amount of information, it's far more complex now, Michele, than it was 20, 30 years ago, correct?
Correct. It takes me a second to go on our service providers and find information about any company in the world. Really, in 10 seconds, I can know the fundamental elements of who is in the board, what are the financial results, recent transaction, anything about a company in a few seconds. If that is all I do when I deliver any result or any information, that's nothing.
Yeah. So it's always adding that extra bit of surprise to the audience. I don't think I'll ever forget that. But it is a really interesting way of looking at it, isn't it? Just that little bit extra will keep it motivated, engaging, and received well. Hey, Michele, I have this question for you about leaders. Do you think leaders are born, or is being a great leader something you can learn? Have you been asked this one before?
I have never been asked this one. And
what do you think?
I'll give you my honest personal perspective. I think we can all learn anything. It's just a matter of how much we enjoy it, how much focus we put in it, the commitment that we have. So some people don't like going down one way. Some people love going down one. So I think you can learn. In my case, I don't think I was born a leader. I don't know if I am a leader now. What I do, I spend my time looking at people, as I said at the beginning, and speaking with people and trying to understand. Oh, I like that characteristic. I like how he thinks. I like the impact that person is having on anybody. It might be from anybody around him. All those elements I look at, I compare to how I behave, what I did, what I've learned, and if it's accretive, I then adopt it and move on. So I am terribly competitive. I do this on anything. So, but this is to say that I think you can learn to be a leader if you want to do it. You just have to learn from the people around you. There's leaders at all levels in every place.
We call that reading the play or reading the room. But when you read the room, you also read the people in the room, correct? You're reading the sentiment.
I would challenge that.
Okay.
Reading the room is a short-term tactic. So I read the room, I understand how things are going, I understand the effect that my words or my presentation is having, and I play with it. If I'm better than you at reading the room, I can play it in a way that I'm more successful, or I impress, or whatever. The other thing I was trying to describe is being humble, basically. Maybe that's the word. So you might meet somebody at the airport, and you don't know if that person is the CEO of a group or anybody else. But maybe that person has a way of communicating with some other person at the airport that is you feel is the right way. You feel that he's being a leader. So leader means that he is giving the other person comfort in what they're doing. It's giving a direction to how the thing should be done, and the person leaves to do that task motivated and excited and comfortable to work with that person. I think, and it's complicated. People are different. So learning from the people around you make you really develop that skill, I think.
And I think it sort of works in with change management as well, because you're working with change all the time, Michele. You're basically a change agent, from what I gather, correct?
Yes, absolutely. And actually, as you're mentioning, change brings together all these elements. You talked about communication. Communication is fundamental in change. People doing change, people are nervous, maybe excited, but obviously nervous. And nobody expects you to do everything right when you're changing something. You make mistakes, and things might emerge you had not ever thought about. But if while you're doing that process, if you communicate regularly and candidly to the people around you, the people that you're impacting, it will be the effect that has is tremendous. People feel on board. They understand what you're doing. They feel part of it. And if things go sideways a moment, they will help. If you don't communicate, they're not going to help. They're going to sit on the side and look at you crash. So communication is absolutely fundamental. Then all the other things we said, right? Empowering people and delegating, all that is crucial. If you empower and make people accountable for part of the task, your leverage in that change will be tremendously stronger. And if the people are actually the ones changing, they become the change factors. They are the ones that are then establishing the new culture or the new processes or whatever it may be. You don't have to do anything at that point. You don't have to convince them anymore. They are the ones that designed it and built it.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And when we talk about change, there's a lot involved in there. What about for those teams that are undergoing change and the leaders are actually finding it quite difficult to keep them motivated? Do you have any advice to keep a team motivated, especially during the process of change?
I go back to the point I made before. I think the only real way to keep people motivated in change, especially when things get hard, is have a frank conversation with them. Be transparent. Tell them what's happening, and if something is going wrong, you just tell them. You tell them what's going wrong, why you think it's going wrong, how you're approaching the solution, and you involve them if you can to make sure that you benefit from other people around you who might have a better idea, and as we said before, they become part of the solution and they will be more tolerant of any difficult situation.
I mean, you're right. Frank conversations are ones that we don't have very often, but they are the ones that in my experience, frank conversations have been the most liberating conversations I've had. And sometimes it means you tell your staff, look, maybe this is not for you. Because you always treat them like family. So sometimes, and as a business evolves and changes and grows, some people have to move on, and that's the reality of life. So yes, exactly.
Yeah. I guess you said it nicely, Mimo. It may be liberating, but they're hard conversations to have, aren't they?
Well, Michele, yeah, of course.
Would you agree,
do you find them difficult, Michele? Do they get easier as you do more of them?
No, not at all. Not at all. And no, it's super painful, and especially if you're having conversations where you're exiting people. I mean, that's the extreme of change, obviously. They don't get better at all, because if you develop amongst your skills or your traits that empathetic style, then you cannot be distant. So even though you should, because it's a business decision if you want, at the end of the day it becomes hard, because maybe the person has done his or her best and simply doesn't work. It's not the right position doesn't exist anymore. It's difficult. I've had a few, and not my favorite.
It's those times where you have to step, as a business owner, you have to step outside the person you are and say, what is in the best interest of this actual business? Because it requires, this business requires X, and I need to make a decision to satisfy the business's requirement. And those are hard, and we have those often. And as you're right, and it's never been easier. So 100%.
Yeah. But thank you for being honest, because I'm sure there's listeners out there going, you make it sound easy, but it is, you just said, it doesn't get any easier over time. So thank you for that, Michele. And Michele, we did want to ask you, do you have a proud leadership moment that you can share with us?
I can think of probably the one I'm proudest of in my work is what we did in Southeast Asia. So I say hello to my Bangkok team. When I got there, I spent a long time there, but when I got there, it was like 4 people. They didn't even have an office. They were basically piggybacking in a corner of somebody else's office. They were hosting them. And when I left a fantastic team of something like 90 people, and across the entire Southeast Asia region. And they were a fantastic team, excited and adventurous, and always looking for that extra opportunity and building a business across different industries in the entire region, in places that are one different from the other. From Myanmar all the way to Japan, all the way to Papua New Guinea. And I felt so proud that over that period of time, I had built not only a good business, but a fantastic team, extremely motivated, extremely resilient. And, I was confident that, and as it happened, that once I left, they continued growing and building.
How did you find them, Michele? How did you find these people? You obviously had to recruit a lot of people. So what was your sort of hiring process? What were you looking for?
It's a mix of things. So you look for certain skill sets, obviously, because you're recruiting for specific jobs. But I've always believed in mixing up things. So I was recruiting across the world. I would recruit people from Turkey. I would recruit people from the United States, from UK, from locally, obviously, quite a few. But even locally, even though the office was in Bangkok, I would recruit from Singapore. I would recruit from Vietnam. Bringing all these people together, especially when you have to manage such a complex geography and business. Going back to the point we were making before, you're bringing together people that have different skills, different way of thinking, different cultures, and together, if you create the right environment, they will be super creative.
Yeah.
So you empower them to bring out their best.
Absolutely. That's the only way I know.
Yeah, no, it's very good. That's a really.
It sounds like you have a really empowering leadership style. Am I correct?
Yes, I think so. It's what has saved me. I work extremely hard, like all of you. And the only way I can really always achieve everything I want to achieve is surrounding myself with a great team. And even now, I have a phenomenal team. I'm proud to say the best team ever. And by empowering them, you're going to get tremendous results.
Yeah, that's amazing. And Michele, before we get into the business questions, in your current role now, I know we've had a chat about this and it's really interesting what you do. Would you mind actually sharing with the audience what you do in the current role so they can get a bit of a context as to what you do? Because it's really impressive.
Okay. Yes. So basically in the current role, which we named corporate development, what we do is we help the company define their long-term strategy. And where we focus on is on everything that is what we call inorganic. So we obviously leave it to the businesses to build the business organically. But we identify maybe areas where the business requires some external addition. That may be an acquisition, or it may be just simply an alliance, a strategic alliance with some other player. So at that point, once we identify all these areas of opportunity or of need, we go around and we hunt for companies or partners with whom to operate, and vice versa. And then we go out and we actually either acquire or set up whatever alliance we think is appropriate. But it also works the other way. By building a terrific network of connections around the world, we have the opposite effect. So advisors or companies themselves come to us to discuss about opportunities, about either investing in them, or they want to learn what we're doing so that we can learn what they're doing. And this exchange, in return, helps us shape our own strategy again. So it's a bit of a circular effect. And it all goes through my little team of 15 people. And we think we have a tremendous impact. And it's going back to the concept of speaking to interesting people. It's amazing. We speak to people that have done incredible things.
So, Michele, you would attract the smaller entrepreneurial sort of players that have the great ideas, but maybe you can see in them there's a big business inside that small business. And so you would say, if we took this small business, scaled it up, worked with the owners, we can capture a bit of an extra market that that CNH Industrial hasn't been sort of known for, perhaps. That's
exactly what we do. To the point that actually 2 weeks ago, we launched a corporate venture capital fund, which is conceptually that. So we have resources. We look for startups. They might be going for a Series A or Series B funding, say $5 million to $20 million of funding. And if we believe there is an opportunity of working together, because we will learn from them, their agility, their technologies, and in return, they can benefit from us because we can help them with product validation or global reach or whatever. We then invest in these companies and we start working together. And you have the giant and the tiny company working together and doing great things. And we already did 6 of these. So we acquire companies, and I've acquired like 25. but we also invest maybe 10% in a company. So meanwhile, I could buy 10% of your company, and at that point, I give you access to all our R&D or our dealers, our customers, and you could play around, or our equipment, and you can play around with us, and you grow and we learn.
That's great, because it's a win-win for all of them. But they've also got to be those companies which are strategic for CNH, obviously, and also it's got to be a benefit for the person that's behind it, because we always say that private equity knocks on your door and they can bring money, but what else can they bring? And so it's a very from we sit in Australia, private equity has got benefits and sort of this detrimental parts, but yeah, it's what else you can bring to the table. And so what we're saying is you can bring more than just money.
That's our value proposition, and as I said, it really works both ways. So we can bring a lot to the company with all our complexity, but we're going to bring a lot to the company and accelerate them. In return, we get something we would never be able to develop ourselves, which is that ingenuity to have.
Of course.
So interesting. Michele, you will call you big business, and you're dealing with small and medium in this scenario especially. What can big business actually learn from small and medium business owners? You mentioned agility, and I'm a business owner. I mean, we have to be agile, otherwise we just won't survive. So is there something that big business can actually learn from small and medium business owners?
A lot. Agility is, for me, is fundamental. It's one of those areas. It's a fundamental trait. Then we learn specific things from the companies. But for us to identify an opportunity and explore it and decide to invest some resources in it to build it, it's such a long process. The opportunity will be gone. I mean, we'll be still looking at horses. While with these small companies, we get a lot of that. What we get also is they attract a specific type of talent that might not come to work for a large corporation like us. And so we tap into that talent, and it might be only 5 or 10 people, but we tap on that talent and we bring our large engineering capabilities together with these 5 to 10 people. And the discussion is very important, because some predetermined decisions or thoughts or processes that the large corporation has get broken by the different perspective that these teams have. So it refreshes your thinking. So not only they contribute directly with their specific knowledge, but also the way in which they do process complexity and solve for it.
So if this was a football team, you'd be looking at buying players that have a specific talent set, or some sort of something else that you're looking for? Is that?
2 things I look for. I look for, the fundamental thing is they must have a technology or a capability that is important to us. It must make sense. The other thing I look for is that what I call that light in their eyes. I need to see them as being disruptive, as having not only a good idea that might be successful or fail, doesn't matter how intelligent they are, but they need to have that strength, that resilience, that agility that allows them to adapt and be successful. I need that because I'm going to expose them to a completely different environment, which is our company, which is bigger and more complex. And I need them to be strong and solid and confident, so that experience they have, that intelligence that I'm trying to learn from, will survive this contrast and contaminate us.
So that disruption is that sort of that questioning of how things are done, and
yes.
You walk into an industry, and we've seen it. We call it blue ocean strategy in some cases. So you can't do that, and we said, well, we just did. So it's that whole questioning, that whole rebellion against what is. And I suppose that the more conservative the industry is, the more it's able to be disrupted in some ways. Is that right?
Yes, you have to be obviously available for that. So you must know what's happening, and you must enjoy it and build on it. Obviously, if you resist it, it has no benefit. And if it hits you without you being aware, well, that's happened many times in the business world, and companies disappear. So I think we are very good at accepting of the disruption. We actually seek it so that our mentality continues to evolve, the way we do things continues to evolve, and one day we'll become more agile ourselves.
You also said that you look at the talent pool of the people that you're acquiring, and so you will look to buy a company based on the managers or the people that are there that are driving that business, as opposed to if they've got a fantastic product, there's got to be a good team behind it. Is that a valid point?
That's textbook. Absolutely, yes. They might have the best product ever, but if the team is not strong, it's not enthusiastic, it's half the deal. So I might go somewhere else at that point. It's very rare that we just buy a product for itself.
And Michele, you mentioned how big business are learning from small and medium business owners. What if we flipped it? What can small and medium business owners actually learn from the bigger business? So, you're obviously acquiring a lot. What are they learning from being acquired by someone as big as CNH Industrial?
I think the biggest thing they're learning is exposure. So small businesses tend to be more local. I mean, generalizing. Small businesses tend to be more local, and possibly even in the way they're local, they might not even be exposed to all the complexities around them. And while that maybe has saved them or has allowed them to thrive in that small environment, it's a missed opportunity for their own learning, and it's a constraint for their growth. While we, by our own size and nature, we operate in all these different environments. And so not only we give them access to all these environments, we have learned, as I said before, I've lived in so many different cultures and places and different business complexities that to me comes natural. And for a smaller company to work with me, all my experience just comes out like it's coming out now. And so they can learn from that just as much as I am learning from them.
So that local thing is typical when you're talking about businesses that can move either interstate or internationally. So you've got a business that traditionally runs in a small geographic area, and you say, well, we could probably take that to a bigger geographic region. But of course, the previous business owner felt that they're probably restricted. Or how much of that sort of business owner thinking are you dealing with? I mean, I always say that the problem with most business owners is what's between their ears, because they just don't think outside the square. So do you find that you come across that?
Less and less. In terms of local, though, you must think not only about geography, you must think about where they are positioning and operating their company, also in the business space. It might be across the world, but maybe it's very it really looks at a smaller part of the market, and it's exposed to a limited number of competitors or a limited number of business partners. So the learning experience becomes a bit suffocating after a while, because it's always the same 4 or 5 interfaces.
Yeah, it's interesting. And Michele, for those people that are listening in today and they're, thinking of selling their business, for example, do you have any advice for them to help them increase their actual sale price? I mean, this is a golden question, I guess, that everyone would want.
These are secrets. I'm a buyer. I don't want them to increase the price of the company.
I like it.
No,
that's a great answer.
Jokes aside, there are a few elements that are very important in order to be able to maximize the opportunity in such a situation. First of all, you have to plan it. It cannot just happen. If it happens, you'll never catch up. You have to make sure that you have demonstrated consistency of results. So people will look back and look at what your budgets were and what you have achieved, and then they will look at more short-term, how you're performing in this moment. Doesn't matter if there is, it does matter, but it's the fundamental aspect is not if the results are phenomenal or not phenomenal, but that you know what you're doing, you're planning, and you're delivering. That gives so much comfort then on the projections that you're going to show. if your current results are all over the place, doesn't matter if good or bad again, but if you're predicting something and you're hitting on it, that gives certainty. If that's not happening, then the projections are not truly credible. Then you move to the fact of those projections. So you must be able to have understood, which I expect you have, the business you're in and the opportunity that there is. And you have to be able to tell that story very clearly, because the buyer is paying not for the business today. The buyer is paying for what the buyer will do with that business tomorrow in their hands. So you must know what the opportunity of your business is standalone, and you have to be able to articulate that very clearly and convincingly. But if you're a smart seller, you also have to know what is the value of that company for the buyer. What is the buyer probably going to do? What other value pockets are there that you cannot access directly, but your buyer will access? And you have to try and tap into those value pockets in order to maximize your sale price. Then we mentioned team. If your team is not in order, before you go into a sale process, put your team in order. That's the first thing I will look at, right? I will sit down with not many, but 3 or 4 people, and I will listen to the management presentation, yes, but I will look at the people. I will look how confident they are. Do they know what they're talking about? Is this person going to deliver more if I give them the tools and the resources to do that? If they're not that kind of person, doesn't matter how interesting the business is, we will probably not buy. So all these elements, as I just described, take time. So if you think that your business has been up and down a bit, and you've been a bit sketchy in how you've been predicting it, and your team is not super strong now, you know you have to change Bob or Jane and do something, well, do that first, because that might double the value of your transaction.
We call that selling a house which is half finished. So you can't sell a house which is missing a bathroom or missing a garage, and saying, listen, if you put the garage here, it would be really good. Well, you should have put the garage in and sell it, because people like to buy houses that are already livable. I suppose that's the analogy I could use in a house. What about technology? Because the technology thing is really interesting. As most family businesses, including mine, we think that this technology thing is something that, are the ones that you're buying, have they got a lot of technology in embedded, or do you see that you can add technology to scale these businesses? Because that's something that
it's an interesting point. Let's divide it into 2. We buy a lot of companies that are technology companies. So the subject, the matter at hand is technology. So obviously I'm looking for that technology. Then if the company, and this is how we approach it, it might be different, but if a company doesn't have their own strong IT system, or in most cases, I am not acquiring a company of the size of my own. I'm acquiring smaller companies. So that is not too interesting, because at the end of the day, sooner or later, we will replace all that with our own systems. So obviously, I need to make sure that the company has a solid reporting structure, so that the numbers are accurate. I know what's going on in that company. It needs to have the appropriate safety in place of the systems, safety in place for the people. So all that fundamental IT needs to be there, not because I'm going to use it necessarily, depends on the company I acquire, but because it gives me that certainty that the company is in control of its results.
It's such great advice, Michele. Like it's not something that a lot of people talk about. So being able to give such advice to business owners is just really great. Thank you. One thing I do want to touch on, and you've mentioned it a few times, is about new opportunities. Are there any tricks or tips that you've got to help business owners actually identify new opportunities? Like, we're often so busy that it might just fly straight past us. Is there something that we should be doing to identify these really great new opportunities?
Yes, I use 2 tricks, methods, approaches. In one case, on one side, I always, on a regular basis, step back and try to think, okay, we've been successful. This is what we do. Where am I missing? Where am I not as strong? Where would be a possible next step, the next area of development? It's more difficult because it's self-centered. So I'm trying to answer my own question. But how then I compensate that is back to a point we were making before. And it's the fact that I always carve out some time every day to speak to somebody outside my circle. So back today, I'm speaking to you. And I speak to venture capital companies. I speak to friends I have in the top consulting firms or top banks I work. These are my business partners. Everybody has business partners. And I don't only talk about the matter at hand. Maybe I have a project ongoing. I ask them questions about, what is happening around me. Now we're looking at ag tech because it's such a big thing, agriculture technology. And our instinct would be that of looking at incremental addition of automation or precision around our own equipment today. Fine, we need to do that. And that's, let me say, the first aspect that I can solve myself. The second aspect is, okay, fine, but what kind of disruptive innovation is happening well beyond my core? That maybe today is insignificant, but maybe tomorrow will be relevant. Maybe disruptive to my business or accretive. Maybe it's something I should get into. And the only way I can discover those is by listening to all these people around me, because they have different experiences. They come from different sides. And so they might say something and that resonates. And so then when I speak to somebody else, I throw it back and say, what do you think about that? And so people naturally speak and they build on it. And that way I understand what new areas are maybe relevant. And then I try to hunt down the actual players in those spaces. And people are super happy to tell you what's happening and what they're doing and how things are and what challenges they're facing. So I set up interview with these people and learn. So every day I dedicate maybe an hour to this.
So this is pure networking, Michele. That's what it is. It's pure networking, surely, where you rely on people that are not necessarily, because I think as a business owner, you really get stuck into the detail and you don't sort of see you can't see the forest for the trees. Sometimes I think that's a big thing with businesses that we find.
Yeah, I think it's the ultimate version of networking. I just don't network to have a connection. I network to try to tap on your experience.
So for any business owners listening today, and they don't network, Michele, what advice would you have for them if they, or for whatever reason, they're shy, they don't like it? I don't know, coming up with excuses, but if they're not networking, what are they actually missing out on? Is this really important? Something that business owners should all consider, regardless of how big they are?
Imagine if you close yourself in a room and you try to come up with an idea, you're going to do the first bit. You're going to be great, terrific. You're going to build a fantastic idea. Then you're going to hit a wall and you will not have any more ideas. You will not think beyond that. And while you're doing that, you're actually biasing tremendously the way you think, because you just did it. So that biases you. If you speak to other people and expose your thinking, they will see it differently. And it doesn't need to be a long session. It's just, that different perspective. If you're careful and you understand a different point of view, then you go back and to your idea and you build it along that perspective. And you will learn so much. But I was shy too about networking. I mean, I don't come across as being shy, but I was getting networking wrong. Networking is not going up to Mimo, a random guy I didn't know before, and start saying, "Oh, hello, I'm Michele. How are you? How's the day?" I mean, he will hate it. I will have nothing to say. Networking for me is gradually building connections and address specific topics you would like to discuss. And you start from a specific topic that you already have in common with that person, but then you stretch that beyond that specific topic, and the person will be phenomenal in giving you ideas. And they will naturally tell you why don't I introduce you to so-and-so who's an expert in that field? At that point, you already have the topic you want to discuss. You don't need to talk about the weather. And you start that connection with that person, and it keeps building, and it's like an avalanche.
You find that when you ask people for advice or help, that people are more than willing to share experiences and help. And I think maybe as small business owners, we don't ask enough questions. I know Dick Smith, famous Australian, all he did was he said, I asked lots of questions when I started, and people were more than willing to share information with me. And I think that's something that we sort of think, oh, I'm too proud to ask a question, or I should know the answer to this. Well, you don't, you know?
I agree.
So I think that's something which we found as well. Yep.
Definitely interesting. And Mimo, I do have a note from our previous catch up. You mentioned something about acquired business. When business is acquired, it can often change, and it's like someone has taken their batteries out. Now, like, I've made a note about this because it's quite an interesting discussion that we had. Can you just bring to light what we discussed? Because I think it's something that a few business owners might find useful.
I spoke to one of my good friends who sold his business many years ago, and then I spoke to the staff where they were working. I mean, it might be an Italian thing, I don't know, but they said that when the owner sold the business, the power supply was switched off or the batteries were taken out. So it's a question of when you work at a business where the owner's there all the time, and being, of course, Italians, we're always on the tools. We always want to sort of be seen to be doing everything. And so when that person leaves, then they see that the electricity's been taken out. And I think, Michele, you've seen that in some businesses, but it's only specific to some businesses. I don't think it's every business that when you buy it, it loses the spark. But I'm not sure. Is that a common thing about the spark moving out when the owner sells?
I think it's yes, it is a very significant risk. It does happen a lot, and it's hard to mitigate. So you basically have to plan for it. And this is how actually we started, in some cases, not acquiring companies, but investing in those companies. So if a company has certain traits, we might acquire them because we know we're going to absorb them. So it's fine. In some other cases, we are relying on that entrepreneurial spirit to continue beyond the time when we invest. And we learned that the best way to have that is by simply investing and allowing them the space and maintaining that ownership, literally, of their own business to their benefit and to ours.
So that's the two models. The one is the sell out completely where the owner goes. The other one is to work with the owner and with the team and then get the best out of both. And that way, I think you get probably the staff will be a little bit more engaged, because the staff clearly, particularly in a family business, are they're very, very protective of the way that things are. And I notice in a family business, the longer you have your staff, the more they want to do things the same way they did 20 years ago, and you want to move it in a different direction. So having that, and so having someone internally to say, listen, I've got this, and things I'll always look after you. And that's probably the best way to sort of transition. Certainly in our industry, the takeovers that have been done with private equity have worked very well when the owners have been able to do what they, and invariably the owners like to do the sales stuff, the marketing stuff, the product stuff. And I don't know about you, but the finance stuff just bores everybody blind.
That's all I do, actually. I do all the finance stuff. So you're asking the wrong person, but I understand perfectly what you're saying. Yes.
Exactly. So it's good. I'm glad you're a finance person, because you're the person I would hire. I'd hire my weakness. That's great. I love it. It's fantastic.
See the power of networking, right?
Yeah, there you go.
Fantastic. Look, I'm looking at the time, Michele. We've actually run out of time. So, Mimo, I'm going to hand it over to you to do a wrap up of the show.
Wow. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Michele. You've been such an insightful leader and an insightful example. And once again, it's just such a pleasure to speak to people that have done so much in their life. And I mean, the sacrifices you have made by moving into different areas, and the company is definitely in a better shape because of people like yourself. And it's good to see that people like you are out there and able to share with us these amazing insights. I think the thing is that the thing you're really looking for is an ownership, a purpose, and people communication is very big in your area. I like the idea about surprising an audience. That's something, with death by PowerPoint is something, and death by email is another one. But if we surprise someone and an audience when we're doing a PowerPoint presentation, then people come out and say, I didn't. Certainly, I know that when you surprise an audience, there's something that people get. I think frank conversations are those ones that we have to have, and we delay and we procrastinate. But I think frank conversations are liberating, to say the least. I think your analogy to a chess game is really interesting, because you say we've got to move 2 or 3 moves ahead. And I think that's what small business owners need to see. Is not so much what is the play today, might be the play in a couple of moves. I like your inorganic approach to acquisition, to acquire or align with the business. So inorganic, to me, means that we're going to buy a business to give it. Our organic growth is, yes, we'll sell more olives next year, or the market of olives is growing in my case. But in a case, we might look at something that's that an acquisition which is strategic to us. And I think the technology part is really interesting, and the fact that you like disruptive companies that maybe have or haven't got technology and that disruptive nature. And I think that whole background you've got in finance as well as automation and knowing businesses is really quite fascinating. So that's really what I took out of it. I think a lot of other stuff there. I think if anyone's got a few hours, they would replay this a few times, because the stuff I missed, stuff that went over my head, and I think I'll probably listen to it a few more times and go, wow, that's what he was talking about. Now I get it, So yeah, I think it's great. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Natalie. Mimo, it was a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Michele. And Mimo, thank you for sitting in for Gus as well. So we do appreciate that as well. And thank you everyone for tuning in. For more information on Leader Talk and for some great resources to help your business grow, check out brainiac.com.au. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Ciao, ciao.
Yeah.